This is the square behind St Peter's Station in Ghent. Time to announce the start of the 2009 cycling season. And yes, an old event with a new name. No longer is the Ghent Classic known as the Omloop Het Volk. It's now the Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, which is a sister newspaper. Riders signing in here, as always, Paul. A big crowd ready to enjoy a nice period of racing in Belgium. And look at the weather, surprisingly rather nice.
Nick Noyen's just climbing up there. This is Juan Antonio Fletcher, the Spanish rider who really does enjoy racing in this part of the world.
As the riders come down here, there is an air of, I think, optimism, I would probably call it. Remember, this is the year, the return of Lance Armstrong. It's the month of February, but Lance Armstrong already being in action. He makes his comeback to cycling. Who would have ever believed that, with a race down under in January and then the Tour of California. Torhoshoft, new team for him and new teams for a lot of riders this year. Cervelo is his team. Roger Hammond, the British rider, knows Belgium very well. He loves being here. He speaks fluent Flemish and always rides well. Stuart O'Grady, the ever-casual man. Look at this. Just puts his bike down.
Stuart O'Grady campaigned this season with a brand new team as well, Team Saxo Bank. And, of course, he'll get help here from Kurt Adler Arvesen, the Norwegian national champion.
Yes, and Philippe Gilbert has been Mr. Het Volk in the past. Will he be Mr. Het Nieuwsblad by the end of the day? Because he won this race last year. He also won it in 2006.
New signing for him during the winter season as well, because he moves across to a Belgian team, Silence Lotto, hoping to get some support in the one-day classics. Greg van Avermaet, watch out for him a little bit later on, because if this race comes down to a sprint, this man has got some fine sprinting legs this season.
Well, don't expect to see the face as we watch Leif Hoster here. His turn will come probably in the Tour. He's had 3 second places there. Don't expect to see on the Lotto team there Cadel Evans. This is not his type of event.
Liquigas rider there, Frederick Willems, moving away. And Marcus Burkhardt as well going to sign in.
New colours for Team Columbia High Road, as they also are now hoping to repeat just the same sort of season they had last year, because they were the best team in the block. Oh, steady on. There's Thomas Vogler here for Bouygues Telecom.
Everybody very nervous. This is the big man, sprinter from Katusha, Gert Steegmans. A new team for him as well. A lot of transfers taking place during this winter season this year. It's going to be very difficult over the first few races to remember which team which rider has gone to.
It is, and Stegmans, of course, is now going to have to take on as a rival his friend Tom Bonen.
Stijn de Volder, sporting his bands on his arm there as the former Belgian national champion. He's a man for this kind of circuit, absolutely.
But just take a look at the crowd here. This is so typical of Belgium. Whenever there's a big bike race, they always do, as they're all coming up to the line now. And these crowds full of anticipation. The course, by the way, just over 200 kilometres. There are 11 small climbs, the famous bergs. Some of the famous names of these climbs are in this event too. There's big Tommeke Bonen.
Bonen will be looking for the win as the Burgermeister lets him go clear.
Well, that's normally 1 lap to go now, lads, as the bell rings as they roll away. This is the route for you. As they're based in Ghent, and now this race has returned to right into the centre of this great cycling city. Goes out through Wetteren, and then as we turn down the bottom, we start all of these climbs here. Beginning with the Leberg, we finish with the Molenberg. The Muur is one of the big ones. We'll have a look at life on that in a second or so. Once over the Molenberg, you make a reasonably flat dash for home.
Well, returning to its roots very much as Ghent, and with the new sponsor Het Nieuwsblad taking over the name at the top, it's a completely different look for this race, which most people, I think, for many years to come will still regard as being the Het Volk. This is earlier on in the day. This is the Muur de Grammont, climbs up to 25%, and there's a 5-man breakaway.
Wim de Vogt, Guillaume Blot, there's the Cofidis rider here. He's got a teammate in Hervé Duclos-Lasalle, Jean Zen of Palmans, and the Landbau Credit rider is David Boucher. Let's go over the cobblestones here. Very attentive crowd there was there as well. The peloton were not too far behind at this stage of the race before we get to the live action. It's been a very active race too. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm abound right now. Well,
there certainly is. The Muur de Grammont coming at 80 kilometres to go. Heinrich Hausler over there on the left-hand side had a very great start to the season with a victory in the Tour of Qatar, a race where he finished in 2nd place in the overall standings.
Well, I must say the peloton climbed this pretty well here as they stamped on the pedals. You take a close look at those cobblestones. They are as they appear, not very good. As once over the top, they make a very sweeping descent. A little bit of a trouble here too. And the rider who's got the problem is Kevin Ista of Agutubel.
Well, he's had a victory so far this season, that young rider. He won a stage of the Tour of the Mediterranean. This is the five-man leading group at 81 kilometres to go with an advantage of over 6 minutes.
So having made the move just before they climb the Muir, now establishing a little breakaway here now, and they've got themselves over 6 minutes. There's the names we've just given you. New professional Blow, number 54, Frenchman. Wim de Vocht is the rider on the new team, which is Vacances Soleil. Sunshine and holidays, I guess.
Sunshine and holidays, and that's what these riders will be looking forward to a little bit later on in the year. 50 miles of racing to go for this leading group of 5 riders, and that should take them around about 2 hours on a day like this.
Interesting they've allowed such a big lead here. 6 minutes is quite a big lead, and as you say, they're inside 2 hours in the finish now. There's a little chase group trying to get itself away here. This is Kaczynski, Jangalai, Katehoven and Turau.
Not too far off the front end of the main field, those riders just taking advantage of the difficult pace over the top of the Mur de Grammont.
Well, this race in the past, in the days of Paul Sherwin, I hasten to add, has been cancelled because of snow, but no such snow this year, and surprisingly so, because the winter in Europe has been a little bit harder than normal, and there's been a lot of late snow here, but it's managed to avoid the fields of Belgium, and it's quite a pleasant day today. So there's nothing to stop the riders having a good go. Here's Wim de Vocht stamping on those pedals. Should I say dancing on the pedals?
I should think stamping on the pedals over the cobblestones like this. 66 kilometres to go now, and that chasing group, number 2 on the road, is at 3 minutes and 50 seconds. The main field is still locked in at almost the 6-minute mark. This is starting to look just a little bit precarious.
Wim de Vocht prepared to do all of the work here, just for the moment. New colours of Vacances Soleil. Cofferty's still got 2 riders here, but one of them has been in a spot of bother all of the time here, and I think it's Duclos-Lassalle is having the problems.
Well, Dad wouldn't be very proud of that, would he? Because Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle was always a man for these north of Europe classics, either Tour of Flanders or Paris-Roubaix. Paris-Roubaix, of course, the father of Hervé Duclos-Lassalle won on 2 occasions.
A big moment last year because he had a good start to the season, Duclos-Lassalle. He won the Grand Prix du Vitour, which is the first race of the season in France, and he also won a small race in Bordeaux in August. So his first 2 professional wins last year.
Yes, but after that it wasn't quite so much fun because, in fact, participating in his first Tour de France, he crashed and broke his collarbone and wasn't able to finish.
Right on the first stage, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, luck turns the corner rather quickly in professional cycling, that's for sure. 65 kilometres to go. Second group at 3:34, 5:40 the peloton.
This is the second group we're looking at here, and they're looking for 3.5 minutes. Just dropping onto the back of the group there, that looks as if that's Martin Zangalai. And it is, in fact, he's a rider who really has matured over the last couple of seasons. We first spotted him when he rode for Skill Shimano, but he's now been picked up by the number 1 team in Holland, Rabobank.
Well, he had a winless year last year for Silence Lotto, and so he slipped across very quickly to this Dutch team. He might see him come through now.
This is Bjorn Turau on the back there in the green and red shorts, and I wonder if this German rider is any relation at all to the great Didi Turau, who led the Tour de France for many years and was a great classics contender himself.
Well, his age indicates it could even be his son, I'll be honest. They're heading up towards the Kreisberg climb here now, these 4 chasers. 3:27 the gap. The peloton still hovering. They're not really getting any closer to the front runners, at least. These 4 making good progress, working well together.
Well, they're locked in pretty much at the same gaps now. I think we'll start to see the acceleration from the main field, though, Phil, once we've gone over the final climb of the day, and that's the Molenberg. And it's a very flat, long run into the city of Ghent, and that's where I would think some of the big teams like Quick-Step and maybe Team Lotto will start to take the reins at the front end of the main peloton.
Just nearest camera here, Stephen Katehoven. He's had 17 wins in his career, which began back in 2004. None of them we would call big wins. I suppose any wins are big if you're a professional, but he would really like to land something like this. But a little matter of 3:22 before they get up to the front.
This is the Kreisberg. It's just on the outskirts of Ronso. Once they get to the top of this cobble climb, they come out onto the tarmac road, which is where the World Championships was a few years ago, when there was a slight contretemps between Steve Bauer and of course Claude Criquillon. That was something that was dragged through the courts for many, many years after that.
Yes, it was indeed, and it was Maurizio Fondrest who was given the world title that day. This is a Jangalai.
He's looking as if he's really giving it some big licks there, and I have a feeling he may well be present in this breakaway, Phil, to take the pressure off some of his teammates in the back, men like Nick Noyens, who's just moved across to Rabobank this winter, and of course Juan Antonio Fletcher.
Well, strange enough, Juan Antonio Fletcher is a man for these classic races. He's proved that in the past. He's the highest place finisher ever in the Tour de Flanders, still to come, of course, in the month of February, where he had a third place there last year. And so it's very unusual to see Spaniards do well in this part of Belgium. It's very unusual to see anybody do well except the Belgians, to be honest. There's the town board of Ronse as we now leave towards the top of the Kruisberg. And these boys making a little bit of progress, but frankly they've only pulled back 3 or 4 seconds on that climb.
Well, you can see this is the front end of the main field. They're very present, as always, the new black jerseys of Team Cervelo test team. Roger Hammond, a man who knows this route extremely well. You can see other riders moving to the front. Quick Step always present with a lot of riders in the top 10 or 12 places. The red jerseys of Team Silence Lotte, they're also trying to get themselves at the front end of the main field. That's a Van Avermaet sitting in 4th position. He obviously is thinking about the possibility of surviving the climbs, but now as a sprinter you can see he's starting to slip back a fraction.
Yes, Joost Postema is down there as well, another man that rides well at this time of the year. Last year he won the 3 days of De Panne, about 5 days long now, that race. But he's down there, second wheel, going through. This is life at the back of the peloton at the moment, and just dragging his heels a little bit. It looks like Christophe Godard on the right there, on the Top Sport Flandre team.
It actually gives you an idea just how tough this climb is. The riders at the front make it look so easy, but this is suffering at the back end of the main field. This, to me, is usually the first violent rendezvous of the season, as far as I'm concerned. It's regarded as the season opener in Belgium. And in fact, the riders normally get blessed before the start of the race by the local bishop.
Well, not too much damage done, I must say. They've come off the Kruisberg. An attack by Cervelo, trying to go. Now, I'm just wondering, in fact, that it might be Heinrich Hausler down there. We need to get a bit closer look, I think.
Well, he's had a great start to the season, I have to tell you, because he was rivaling Big Tom Bonham when he went to the Tour of Qatar. There's an incident over on the left-hand side of the road, and that's a rider from Quick Step who has a mechanical incident. Oh, it's not Quick Step, sorry, it's Polman's.
Yeah, Polman's, similar colours. It's Kenny van der Schuren, yes.
A lekker band, flat tyre for him, the race radio announcing the incident there. In fact, one of his teammates seems to be stopping there. It may well be that his teammate is pulling back there to try and pick him up. That's Stefan de Wilde.
Oh, it's good teamwork. There's plenty of time to recover. 62 kilometres to go, just on 40 miles left to race. A 5-minute spread could be a bit of a push here for the peloton.
You can just note now that this is starting to get just a little bit grippy at the front end of the main field, and that is Valery Dmitriev just sitting at the back there for Team Astana. A slightly new strip for them.
We'll have to pull the socks up this year too, won't they?
They certainly will, because Mr. Lance Armstrong has come back to the sport of professional cycling. There's going to be a lot of responsibilities on the shoulders of Team Astana later on in the year.
Christophe Godard, is he slipping away? No, he's just about hanging on in here, because he's recovering from the Kruisberg, and there's still more to come. Now, there's still one rider down there. It looks like it's still the Cervelo rider trying to get clear.
It actually looks like the shape and style of Henrik Hausler from around about 1,000 feet in our little helicopter here. And that's probably why there's a reaction at the front end of the main field. Time gaps starting to change a fraction from the 6-minute margin. The main field have hacked away 1 minute off that advantage, and they pulled it to 5:05. And in fact, they're starting to close in on the group that's caught in no man's land.
Now back up to the five riders in the breakaway. Yes, 2 riders from Cofidis here. De Vogt is the rider with the yellow jersey at the back. And they're not looking too tired at the moment. They're going well.
A little mini Tour of Flanders, really, Ghent, the Ronde van Het Nieuwsblad. And in fact, this section of cobblestones is Donderij at 800 metres, but they're fairly nice cobblestones. As you can see, everybody's still prepared to work. And despite Hervé Duclos-Lassalle still having a little bit of a tough time, he still managed to hang tough and stay in this leading group of 5.
Just look at the way they ride these cobblestones. These are actually rather smooth cobblestones here. A bit disappointing, really.
They may be for you.
They've got a good rhythm going on them. And a lot of cars behind, considering there's only 5 riders in the lead, so they've got to watch this. They don't bridge. Jochen Sommer from Elkhouse.
Austrian rider, a little bit of a shortcut by one or two of the guys there. Always riders are prepared to take risks in the races in Belgium. When they see the opportunity of a shortcut, they will always take it. But it can be dangerous.
60 kilometres to go. This is the peloton, chasing at around about 5 minutes at the moment. 241 there is Nicolas Baillet, the Belgian rider, on Verandas Willems. That's a new team to me.
233 just behind him, though, is Gert Omloop, the former Belgian national champion. He's obviously not having a great day here this afternoon. You get a chance there to see how quickly that young man made up probably about 40 or 50 places.
One of the Palmans riders it was who got through the car park from back to front. Blind eyes usually turn to situations like that, but you've got to be very vigilant. If you start breaking off the route like that, things tend to pop up and knock you off.
Well, everybody's getting a little bit nervous now. Big Johan van Sommeren in the front end of the main field in the red and black jersey of Team Silence Lotto. And the reason for them picking up the pace like this is there's another section of cobblestones going up, and everybody knows that the best way to ride Het Volk, I should say Het Nieuwsblad, is at the front when it comes to the cobblestone sections.
Yes, let's go back up to these are the 5, but it looks as though we've dropped one of the riders here.
Looking that way, and it's probably...
It's Blow.
It's Blow who's gone, and this time Hervé Duclos-Lassalle has managed to recuperate and get himself back into the
down
field.
amongst the cars. Look, he's gone way back, so we didn't see him go, but he's cracked. That's down to 4 now, so this is the pressure on now. Word will get back to the peloton, 4 minutes and 22 seconds.
Well, I have a feeling it won't be too long before the main field will be starting to pick up that second group on the road. This is the moment when he cracked there, Phil. And it's because of the fact this is a slight incline on the cobblestones, and I think it's a question of boom, boom, and out go the lights.
Yes, well, the pressure's been kept on pretty much all of the time here.
Well, naturally, Phil, it looks as if he was having a mechanical incident there because he's got the mechanic up alongside him. Now,
and if he isn't, it looks like he is.
It may well be a slight professional foul there.
We'll see. The referees here will watch for that one now. They won't allow that if it isn't a proper mechanical problem. And I know quite a few race commissaires who, even when you have a mechanical problem, insist you don't hold the car. Sometimes it's not so easy.
It's not so easy for the mechanic. You can see the team managers come up here for a quick chat with Duclos-Lassalle. Probably just to let him know that his teammate is either having at the back.
Well,
rider from Garmin gone down there.
Yeah.
Oh, 2 men on the ground here.
I'm just wondering what's happened here because the road edge is there. This rider's looking to be a little bit hurt here, and it looks as though it is possibly Krivtsov.
It is Krivtsov.
Yeah. And the rider here from Garmin Slipstream is Chris Sutton, who went down. That's a shame because this is a race for Chris Sutton, but he's not looking too happy with this just now. Well, maybe a rib gone there.
These races are very dangerous. It may well be. You can just see that line down the middle of the concrete. These are cement roads here in Belgium, and that line down the middle can be a very precarious thing. Riders call that the Death Valley. Let's see if we can see where it happened.
Just on the corner now.
Oh, there's a couple of guys actually gone off the side of the road there. They went down pretty hard.
Yes.
Christoph looks actually the most seriously hurt there. He's the rider in the yellow and black strip on the right-hand side.
Now, we are just hearing, as we look at this accident, that the reason they're not showing those 4 chasing riders at the moment is they've just been disqualified. They've apparently gone through a gated railroad crossing and been given a red flag. And so they've taken them off the reckoning here. Now, I've no idea if they're still riding, but they've certainly been disqualified from the event.
Well, the rules are very clear, Phil, that if you go through a railway crossing and the lights have started to come on, then you are supposed to stop. And your time is taken by the referees if you are caught by the main field. And obviously those guys saw the lights starting to flash, and maybe they took advantage of trying to sneak across. We'll find out more later.
Yeah, well, that was Keetoven, Jangelai, Kudzinski and Bjorn Turau who were in that chasing group before and were making progress. But apparently the orange light had started flashing and they didn't give way. They went straight through. So whether the barriers were down or not, I don't know. But I suppose if the orange light is flashing, you're supposed to stop.
Absolutely. Van Avermaet riding very close to the front end of the main field. Not a high tempo in the peloton, just inside of 40 kilometres an hour, but it has in fact, Phil, been a fairly fast race so far with an average race speed of the breakaways at about 40. I think that is the remnants of that group of 4 riders caught in the middle.
And they don't look as though they've stopped to me.
Well, no, I think they have stopped there. They're splitting up, waiting. I think they know that the race is pretty much over for them.
Well, they've been given the red flag, as far as we know, because it's been announced, but these are the 4 riders. And it is Jalingi who is actually pushing on a little bit. Oh, he's at the back. He's remonstrating here with somebody. Well, I think they've been told.
Well, that is one of the referees there with the red coat on the motorbike. And you can see Jalingi is actually...
Look at Tura. He's really upset about this.
Well, this was a great move for these riders, especially a young rider like Turo getting himself into that chasing group of 4 riders. But obviously, they are getting the information now that they are out of the race, and that's being delivered by the race commissaires. It's always pretty tough because when you're in a race situation and a break situation, you get pretty excited about what you're doing, and sometimes you make silly mistakes, as we've seen in the past in races like Paris-Roubaix.
Well, it's a controversial situation. As you can see, we never saw any railroad crossing, so the cameras weren't there. So we'll only have to find out what the riders have to say at the end of the day and the race referees, but they've made their decision. Those riders have been told to find the nearest way back home to Ghent, and it won't be via the remaining kilometres of this race today.
No, there's a lot of discussion, and these 2 riders still riding at the front end of the race, but they are out. We're hearing officially over race radio, they are definitely out of the Het Nieuwsblad race here, Ghent as we call it.
Nobody told Kuzinski and Tura at the moment. They're still racing. And this is the referee again saying, I'm sorry lads, you're out.
From the BWB, the Belgian Wielerbond.
Well, it's a hard thing to do. In my earlier days, I used to be a chief commissaire, and as the World Championship, I had to go and show a red flag to some riders I counted as friends because they took drinks outside the allotted zone, and that was also a tough thing to have to do.
Back up to the front end of the race now, the Kop van de Wegstrijd, 56 kilometres to go, and the main field now starting to eat into that advantage, which was as much as 6 minutes. It's now down to inside of 4 minutes. This is the Tyenberg, a very difficult climb. A 15.5% maximum gradient, and as you can see, the riders here taking advantage of the little canal down on the right-hand side there. It's slightly smoother and allows them to ride just a little bit easier than if they were over on the left-hand side, actually on the cobblestone section.
Difficult one for the spectators. As you can see, no cars can get through to the Tyenberg, so you've got to walk the climb. And this looks like it might well be that Rabobank have decided the Tyenberg is the springboard because they put the whole team on the front.
Well, bear in mind that the face of the race has changed for Team Rabobank because their rider, Changali, has just been disqualified from the chasing group of 4. And as we head down towards the Tyenberg, Team Rabobank know that this is a very strategic point of the race. It's a very difficult climb, almost as hard, I would have to say, as the Koppenberg, a climb that the riders will face a little bit later in the year in the famous Tour of Flanders.
And they're fabulous racing roads, these, but only if you're strong, of course. They're extremely narrow. And that's another reason for putting the pressure on at the front to stop anybody moving up on a road as narrow as this. You want to see the climb first if you can. There's clearly a plan here by Team Rabobank, the Dutch boys. They've got a likely man for the top in Fletcher, who's right there with them at the moment. So they've lost their Jangeli now. He's gone, disqualified for that level crossing incident. And Paul Sherwin's right. This is now a change of tactics here.
Well, Matty Heyman was the rider on the front doing a lot of the pacemaking there. They certainly, I think, are going to hit this race very hard, Phil, when they get to the slopes of the Tyenberg. And that's why they're all moving up. You see how they're riding very closely together. This is definitely a preconceived plan by Team Rabobank. Round these tiny little corners that take these riders through the fields of Flanders. It is so important in races like this to be near the front end of the main field.
56 kilometres to go. A big move on here, I think, and just look at the aggression from Rabobank now. I think it's still Matty Heyman driving at the front as the flags to slow them down as they start to swing onto the cobblestones. And they see that the advantage, look at the back of the peloton, is having to slow right down to get round the corner. That makes a very painful exit.
Every man here from Rabobank, but look, you can't catch out the riders from Quickstep. They know these kind of tactics. This is the start of the Tyenberg, 15.8%. Everybody from Rabobank is sacrificing themselves, I think, to try and set something up for the big man, of course. Nick Noyen's newly on this squad, and, of course, Juan Antonio Fletcher.
Yeah, Bonen's there, 5th wheel down, first of the other teams, in fact, as he sits there on the wheels. He He's got a very shrewd tactical head on his shoulders, Tom Bonan. He comes from the Tour of Qatar in good form. He sits there, and now he's going to try and follow the smoothest section of the road. Everybody else scrabbling. Look at that gap. We've taken 30 seconds off the breakaway since this action started.
I tell you what, this is really hurting. And we've got 4 Rabobank riders in the first 4 places, and they've actually, Phil, got themselves a gap. Oh. This is phenomenal. This is a great piece of teamwork here. And, in fact, one of the riders from Quick-Step there is the man who let the gap go.
Well, take a look at the new style team time trial here as the 4 boys go clear. They've split the peloton. It's not Tom Bonan who's on the head just now, but he's right there. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 men down. It looks like he might be sat on the wheel there of Andreas Klaya from Cervelo, but these boys have got what they wanted and they're going for it.
Well, you have to go for it when you've got 3 teammates in a break of 4, and I think that's why we've got them all sacrificing themselves. They realise now they've got a very good chance of putting the hammer down and opening up a big gap.
Well, you say 3 teammates in a break of 4. They look like 4 teammates to me, Paul.
Well, one man has got 3 teammates with him, is what I was trying to say.
Oh, very clever. OK, I'll pass on that one.
OK.
Well, we've got Langeveld is here. I think Fletcher is here. Nick Noyens and I think Postuma at the moment. These are the 4 trying to get clear.
Matty Heyman just sitting on the back there as well, the big man.
Yeah, that's Postuma. Actually, that's not Heyman as he goes through. He is very similar to Matty, tall and thin.
Problems at the back. This is Kurt Adler-Arvidsson as well, and I'm surprised to see him at the back end of the bike race here this afternoon. If you have a bit of a mechanical incident here, you're not really going to get yourself back into the race before Ghent.
Well, I think all of a sudden poor old Arvidsson's living to fight another day here, because these boys' legs, that's Bert de Backer from Skilled Shimano. That's the new colours of the Milram team, and if you think it looks like the colours of a Jersey cow, that's exactly what they're meant to look like. Just the wrong the right pattern and the wrong colours.
Definitely. Now, this is organisation now, and you can see 1 or 2 riders here trying to get themselves organised, because you cannot allow 4 men from the same team to ride away from a race like this.
Well, I think this is great riding by Rabobank, and clearly they've now thrown everybody else into a state of panic. They've got themselves a group chasing here, which is a very nice-looking group, but you see Rabobank is splitting up that chase group. This is the incident, and this looks like it is Mathieu Claude of France.
He's not enjoying the mud at the side of the road there, Phil. I think he's just popped. But certainly everybody now starting to find the toughest part of this course. Bonan coming up to the front there with his teammate relaying him on the front end of the main field. 3rd place there is Juan Antonio Fletcher.
That teammate is Sylvain Chavanel, Paul, who's setting the pace. New colours for him.
Yeah, Chavanel deciding during the winter transfer to swap and move away from a French team to come onto a very solid Classics team. And I think he's probably thinking a little bit further down the road, Phil, because he reckons he's got a good crack at winning races like Liège, Bastogne-Liège and the Flèche Wallonne. And to win a Classic, you have to have a strong, solid Classics team.
Well, we've seen this race a number of times. I must say it's been very aggressive today, but I don't think I can ever recall a 4-man team time trial getting away. And they forced the issue and broke the elastic, and they've gone. And the 4 very strong riders for Rabobank here. I'm not surprised these boys are trying to sort themselves out, because there may be nobody else left in this race right now.
It's hard to recognise Sylvain Chavanel not in his red and white jersey of Team Cofidis, this jersey, in fact, that he's had for many, many years. And in fact, this is the comeback now by Blow. He's managed to recover somehow, Phil, and get back up to the leading group of 4, making them once again a 5-man group.
Well, they're still saying 4 here, but we can count 5, and Blow is the man who's tagged on the back. I'm sorry, there's Zen has come on as well. So all 5 are here. But look at the gap. Down now, well inside 3 minutes. They're not going to survive now. The Eichenberg, maximum 10% or 1 in 10, right in the middle of the climb.
Well, this is the penultimate climb of the day, the Eichenberg. Once they've gone over here, they've got the Molenberg, which is the last climb of the day. But definitely that gap has started to get sliced very dramatically. 1.2 kilometres in length. Once you zigzag around here in this part of the Flanders to find all the climbs, there's basically one ridge of hills that most of the races in this part of the world zigzag one way and another just to find the most difficult sections.
I have to say that Guillaume Blow at the back here, he was obviously off with the mechanical. He doesn't look in too much trouble here. He's just, OK, he's hanging on, but he's only just come back as they started the climb of the Eichenberg, and I think he'd be OK. He's a man of the north of France, as Cofidis is, so he'll be well used to these roads. And somebody didn't make that.
That was a Milram rider, had a problem there at the side of the road.
And still has.
Cholik. Though you've got the German champion bands for him. Another man who swapped away from... there's a mechanical... I
don't think he's got anything left of his rear cluster there.
No, a crash though, Phil, because he's ripped up his shorts pretty nastily.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get a little flashback of that, but maybe not. As we move back up here to the leaders at 2:37, there is now a third group, they are saying. Blow, it's not over for him yet. He's just beginning to crack a little bit, but it's not far to the top. So if he can hang on just a little bit longer, he'll quickly rejoin, and he thinks so as well.
Well, he's taking advantage of the smooth section over at the left-hand side of the road just to recover. Once you get off that and back onto the cobblestones, then it really starts to bite and hurt that little bit more. He's got himself about 700 metres to survive to get to the summit. They'll take a right-hand turn at the top end of this climb, and then he should be able to recuperate for 3 or 4 kilometres.
De Vogt has been the strong man of this breakaway. He's always been driving on all of the climbs. And he's still at the front now. As Duclos Lazal willing to work with him. Blow has recovered. He's hitched up again. Zen is just in front of him.
Well, not too far to go. Once they get to the top of the climb, there's 50 kilometres to go to the finish line in Ghent.
Yeah.
A new finish line. For many years, this race used to finish in the small town of Lokeren. I have to say, as a purist of the one-day classics, I'm very happy to see Ghent come back to its original format.
Meanwhile, the team time trial, back in the Tour de France this year too, is now continuing here with the 4 top riders in Fletcher, Langeveld, Noyens, all trying here, and Postma.
Well, they've got themselves a good 15 to 20 minute second advantage.
They'd like 20 minutes.
They certainly would. Now there's a little bit of excitement still. A little bit further back down the course. Again, I think riders there involved in some kind of an accident. This again looks like Hausler really pounding away at the front end of the main field. Just behind him, Tom Bonen. A little bit further back, that looks like the big shape of Thor Hushovd.
Well, I think this is clear, actually. Hausler's that guy 4 riders down, but these riders looking very similar in their riding style. But Andreas Klier, we haven't seen him ride particularly well for the last couple of years. Is looking a bit sharp now, but they've got this new enthusiasm with a new team on the block of Cervelo. And Tom Bonen digging deep here, but hanging on. Quick look over his shoulder, and he's seeing the riders behind. They're struggling a bit.
Well, he knows these climbs exceptionally well, Tom Bonen, knows where to ride them. I think the reason he's just sitting in second position there, Phil, is because he doesn't actually want to make a move at a point like this. He wants to be involved in a large group over the top because he knows they're still looking to try and pull back those 4 Rabobank riders.
The Australian rider Baden Cook is now on Vacances Soleil as well, the new team, and I wasn't sure, but I thought that might have been him in this split. Let's hope it is. Bonen got control of the front now. Klier's tried to split them up, not with a great deal of success, but he's going to have another go by the look of it here. There's still that gap to this group we're looking at 2:14, so they're still closing in, slowly as it is.
Yeah, but there's been a serious selection now on the slopes of the Eichenberg, and that's really because of the pressure of the chase behind the 4 riders from Team Rabobank, who really, I think, caught everybody unawares, going to the front, opening up the gas, and then splitting the field on the Tyenberg.
50 kilometres to go to the finish, and this we switch back up through the trees here. Is there only 3 down there? Yes, we've dropped one of them, just hanging on.
Not quite.
Not quite, but he's not there, is he? They're not waiting for him either. We'll see if he gets back over the top.
They'll look over their shoulders now and see that he's not too far off the back end of the group, and if he's looking reasonably fresh, I think they'll wait for him. But there's a big acceleration on the front end of this chase group here. Bonen in 5th position now, looking fairly calm. Thomas Vogler up there in 4th as well from the new team B-Box. And that, by the way, is apparently a large ghetto blaster.
Greg van Avermaet is the rider in 2nd place, who packs a good finish. If he can get to use it today, he might be feeling now that the Rabobank boys are going to get caught. They're only a hatful of seconds in front. The splits also coming over the top here, still in with a chance of regrouping. Once we're over the Molenberg, there's no more noted hills here, so we could see 4 or 5 little separate pelotons all regrouping on the run-in.
Well, there's been a serious sorting out there on the Eichenberg. And I think now any of these riders, as you say, if they can survive to the Molenberg, have got a fairly reasonable chance of getting themselves back into contention, because it is completely flat from the Molenberg all the way down into the outskirts of the city of Ghent.
Flat 2 minutes now. This is the 3rd group, remember. They're virtually picking up the riders from Rabobank. So it's a 1:58 spread. They're closing in quite quickly now on the leaders. You've got to feel sorry for those 4 riders in between. Had they contacted earlier and not been disqualified, it may be a different race pattern. But that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be. As we're sat at the back here with Matthias Friedemann, German rider on the Whirlpool team.
Again, a little bit of organisation coming into this field at the front. This is the Wolvenberg. This is a small climb which is not cobbled. But it does kick up to around about 17.5%. And once they get over to the top of that, I think then the next climb on the horizon will be the Molenberg.
It's almost a residential street, the Wolvenberg here. There's where it kicks, just around that corner. Blow is sitting at the back, getting his first taste of professional cycle racing this early in his first pro season. And he's in the breakaway, which has had a pretty good day out. And there's the top, so it's not a terribly back-breaking climb, this one. It's a sprint climb, power climb, if you like. I have to say the Belgians, who know their sport inside out, are being very, very good today. They're being very organised on the climb here.
That won't be the case a little bit later in the year, though, Phil, when we get to the month of April and we see the Ronde van Vlaanderen, a race that moves around about 750,000 spectators out onto the roads. This is the first time that the Belgians have come out to see bike racing in their country this year. It's always the season opener for them, and for the real diehards, they really take advantage of the possibility of getting out to see the victory, maybe by a Belgian rider, because this race over its history has been pretty much dominated by the Belgians.
Hervé Duclos-Lassalle seem to have conquered the climb a little bit better at the moment, as we're now watching the Boucher, I think it is now, taking up the running at the front.
Yeah, but look at the gap there. The 4 riders from Rabobank are still off the front. Fletcher has managed to get himself in there with Langeveld, Noyens and Postuma. That's a serious list of names, Phil, to get off the front end of the main contenders. And they're about to start the Wolvenberg too.
The thing is, at this time of the year, the riders are not exactly race fit. You're not too sure who has got the legs for the chase. And these 4, the way they ripped away, are going to be feeling quite confident. It's almost like a team time trial training session, this. They're at 1:26, but you see only 11 seconds ahead of the next chase group, with Tom Bonen in there.
Well, psychologically, this is a great move to be in a team, because you also know that you don't have to hold anything back at all and try and conserve a little bit of energy to beat anybody who's not in your team. You know that you're all from the same team, you're all flying the same flag, so you don't hold anything back at all.
Now, this is Heinrich Hausler here, and he's using his brute strength to ride away on this climb.
I'm quite amazed at how much he's changed, Phil, in the space of 3 or 4 months. This is a rider I think we're going to see a lot of this season. He's a rider who is now starting to mature, and it really, I think, has a lot to do with the morale on this new Cervelo test team. They've had a great start to the season with, of course, earlier on in the year, their man Thor Hushoff getting himself a victory in the Tour of California. Always aggressive as well is little Thomas the Tank Vogler, trying to get himself across the gap, and he obviously knows how Heinrich Hausler is riding, because Hausler himself a stage victor in the Tour of Qatar.
I think Thomas the Tank has taken over from Chiappucci there, Claudio Chiappucci, the gadfly we always called him, but he was always so annoying with his attacks. No rhyme or reason, just caused trouble for everybody. I've heard the rumour, by the way, Paul, that Heinrich Hausler, yes, he's German, but as you know, he's brought up in Australia, in Inverell. He's going back to holding an Australian licence from next season.
And one of the main reasons for that is he actually wants to participate in the World Championships in Melbourne next year. Now, to qualify for a change and to represent your new country, you can't participate in a national event, and that is a World Championships or an Olympic Games, for 2 seasons. Now, Hausler didn't race in the Olympic Games or World Championships last year. I think he'll skip the World Championships this year in order, hopefully, to get selected for Australia the following season.
And all the folks will come down. Johan van Summeren, the workhorse of the Tour de France for his team, for Cadel Evans and Robbie McEwen in particular. Looks as though the legs aren't quite ready yet. The snows are still in his mind.
The lights have definitely gone out for this man, but watch out for him later on in the season, because big Johan van Summeren will be a man who will be looking after Cadel Evans in the big mountains.
Now, I've got a feeling that's Langeveld trying to nose off the front of the 4, but the boys are closing in quickly.
Well, Hausler's got himself across the gap there as well, because he's joined the Rabobank riders, but it's not now very much more than about 5 or 6 seconds. And that next group on the road there is starting to look a very select group indeed.
47 kilometres. The gap is tumbling down here to the actual leaders of the race. We're not even giving you the time gaps. We can see it for these boys as they still continue. Difficult for the cameraman to hold steady right now because of the bouncing on the cobblestones, but that was Postma on the front.
Noyen's in second place. And there you can see that Hausler has got himself across the gap, and so too has Vogler, but they've only got about 5 or 6 seconds advantage. I think this little escapade by the Rabobank riders, Phil, is almost over.
Well, hats off to Heinrich Hausler. He's recovering on the back. He's not gone forward yet. I don't see any real reason why he would, although having said that, he was moving up there at the moment.
Stegeman's there with a little bit of a problem with his legs, I think, here this afternoon.
Yeah.
New team for him, Team Katusha, representing the new world of Russian cycling.
Well, if they take over cycling like they've taken over football in Great Britain, it could be an interesting season. It's a very, very rich team, Katusha. They've taken over Robbie McEwen as well to their side.
Just looking there at the gap starting to appear, it really is getting a little bit grippy now at 46 kilometres to go, but 1 or 2 riders now starting to scramble across that gap, and I think everyone panicked a fraction, Phil, when we saw that acceleration coming from Rabobank. Again there you can see the move on the pavement of the side of the road there coming from Henrik Hausler, trying to make sure that nobody gets off the front.
21 riders in this group from top to tail just now, and no sign of anybody chasing just behind. The gap is coming down dramatically quickly now. We're inside 1 minute to catching the 5 leaders. So it's almost inevitable now with 46 kilometres to go. They will catch those leaders, but will they catch them before we go over the top of the Molenberg? If they do, we're going to see some terrific racing down towards the finish in Ghent.
You just see how agile these bike riders are, the way they flick the bikes up onto the pavement to get a slightly smoother ride. If you don't get that right, if you don't get the bunny hop right, you find yourself very rapidly on the ground, and the way to do that is to lift up the bike not only with your arms at the front but also with the pedals, which are clipped into those cleats, and you can jump up to a height sometimes of between 6 and 10 inches.
So we have Sebastian Langeveld and Heinrich Hausler here going clear at the moment, which gives them a few teammates back in this chase group who won't be chasing. You've probably got 12, 13 riders now only who can muster up the chase on these two. The gap is being forced here, and it's been forced by some tough riding. Meta as Heinrich Hausler drives on. There's cobbles here, isn't it?
There are a good long section of cobblestones when the riders come out of Mater. But I tell you what, this is a changed bike rider for me this year, because Henrik Hausler here is riding with confidence. In the past, Phil, he always used to act and race like a sprinter, thinking about how the race was going to unfold towards the last 20 or 30 kilometres. But this is an aggressive Henrik Hausler in the 2009 season.
Well, don't forget, he's got his stripes already this year. Second overall in the Tour of Qatar, which is a sprinter's race, but he didn't win a stage to get there. He's very consistent. A couple of stage wins in the Tour de Algarve just recently, so he's got good legs for this time of the year. And the answer is, when you know you're going well, make use of it. And I think he's doing just that.
He certainly is a very confident man. I just noticed a quick recovery there at the back of the group via Johan van Summeren. So after going through that bad patch, he's still staying in contact. A lot of pressure is going to be on the shoulders of Philippe Gilbert, who's moved across during the winter season, Phil, to join Team Silence Lotto. And he, of course, is a defending champion.
Well, there's the two chasers at the moment. We are hearing, you mentioned Gilbert, he's in that chase group. We'll see if we can pick him up. So he must be in there with Greg Van Avermaet, who we've also seen. Hello, little slowing of the ways here now. Some of the teammates saying, well, if you want to catch him, start working. They're now trying to work out who is going to start the chase. That's going to be worth a few seconds.
Well, a little bit of blocking going on there by Team Cervelo test team as well, trying to slow down the chase at the front end of this main contenders group. And the reason for that is they're trying to give the advantage across to Heinrich Hausler.
Well, it's going away right now. That was a significant improvement. Probably stole at least 10 seconds there with the sitting up of the chase. So the infighting has begun. The gambling has now begun. Because we're waiting. The peloton, which is the peloton which we've just seen, is at 1:46. The two riders haven't got a time check on, but they've got to be closing in.
I'll tell you one thing, the main field or the main group of contenders here, the people who are losing out are Team Quickstep, which is why, of course, they're coming to the front now to set the tempo, because they have missed every move so far this afternoon, and that's surprising for a team of the classics.
And heavily marked here, Andreas Klein is the rider in second place, blocking. There'll be no help coming through. 43 seconds to this third group.
In fact, it's Bonin on the front being responsible for doing most of the pacemaking. And just looking down the line there, Phil, it doesn't look to me as if he's got a lot of teammates in the group with him this afternoon.
Yeah, well, he's willing to do his work, and I'll give that for Tom at the moment. There's a few riders sat there now. There's no help coming. There's also riders with those in that five-man leading group here, so they're not going to work either. There's a good chance these boys will fall away from contention if they keep this attitude up. Here are the riders at the front, still well represented in that main field as well. There's a problem coming up here now. This is Roland, Dominique Roland, the Canadian, who has now been given a big chance here on the Cervelo team. He's a fast sprinter as well.
Sorry.
Oh. Well.
I stopped it.
You'll be fine.
Stop it. Is the camera still rolling?
It's
Hey,
okay.
I like the bunny hop thing. That was good.
It's all right.
It's all right, leave.
Well, Roland wants some help here now. Hand in the air. That's a little bit bad luck. That's Bernard Eisel of Columbia High Road as well. Had his big moments last year. He is a sprinter in his own right, but tends to be helpful for the other big sprinters, especially Mark Cavendish on that team.
Well, Tom Bonin here is doing a storming ride. He obviously is taking all of the responsibility of not having a man in the breakaway, and I think giving some respect to Henrik Heisler, who is in the chase group at the moment, second group on the road. A little bit further back, I just caught a sight of Philippe Gilbert.
Yep.
There's Greg Van Avermaet over on the right-hand side as well.
Well, we've got a very interesting pursuit going on here right now. We've still got the leaders up front. And then we've got that little chase in between of Heinrich Hausler and Langeveld. There they are, and they're coming.
Well, they're halfway across the gap. I would say they're looking to try and bridge now, not very much more than about 20 seconds. And I have to say that Hausler is doing a storming ride here this afternoon, but a little bit further back as we pull back with the helicopter gives us a chance to see just exactly where the group of Tom Bonin is, and they're probably looking for another 30 seconds themselves. And Bonin is having to do all of the work on his own, but he has got a teammate just at the back of the group.
Well, Langeveld obviously is feeling pretty hot at the moment. Here's are some of the names for you now, and some good names here in this chase group. But they're leaving an awful lot of work to big Tom Bonin now. Won't be too happy with this because there's too much interest up front. And the old team tactics are playing out well, but not if you're on the Quick Step squad.
But it is working out very well if you're on the Rabobank squad, because Rabobank have got 4 riders in that group. They're very happy to defend. I noticed Fletcher was in 3rd place.
Yep.
And he'll be just sitting, waiting in the wings to see what happens and how this race develops. And if his teammate gets caught, watch out for a counter move by Juan Antonio Fletcher.
Well, they tried with Zhangalai, didn't they? And then that went all pear-shaped when he got disqualified for that railroad incident. Now they're trying with Langeveld. All of the time they're keeping Fletcher as the likely man to score for them if it all goes wrong. But at the moment, Langeveld, by the way, he's only ever won 2 races in his career, which began back in 2006. But he has always been a strong workhorse, and he's gone with Heinrich Hausler, who I think you could call him the man on form.
Now that is Thor Hushovd moving up into 2nd position now, and he's sitting all over the back wheel of Tom Bonin. And the reason he's doing that is just to try and discourage any kind of organisation. And of course, the reason why the Rabobank riders are lining up behind him is to make it a long way to get to the front, and that discourages riders from going to the front of the group and doing a little bit of work. Problem at the back.
Oh,
now that was one of the leaders.
Again, wasn't it? It's Blow again. Well, he's having a real rough ride, Guillaume Blow. He's had a couple of mechanicals today, and I think that will cost him his place in the break. Really bad luck, but that's pro bike racing, as he'll probably find out in the next 10 years.
Well, he's going to have to learn a lot, but fairly quick change, a smooth change for him. That's why Hervé Duclos-Lassalle has gone to the back. This is the Molenberg at the top of the climb. It's 38 kilometres to go for the finish, but this is the last serious climb of the day.
Yeah, goodbye to the back teeth with the climb over the Molenberg today. Then it's a long run in down to the finish in Ghent, though. Some 38 kilometres to the finish. Plenty of time to reshape this race. And if our camera cuts back, it's not going to be far back down the climb now to see Sebastian Langeveld and Heinrich Hausler. 16 seconds is the gap. There is a very select chase group. Was 21 riders. Looks to me as though it's even less than that.
Well, they've just picked up a blow as well there. You might just have noticed him getting picked up in the front end of the main field as they start. Oh, a little bit of excitement going around there. This looks like Gilbert.
It is Gilbert. Well, there's a turn-up for the buck. The man that's claimed this race twice in the past 3 years is now giving it. He took that very, very wide look. Oh.
Yeah, he certainly did. Look at the face on Gilbert here. He loves this bike race. Amazing, really, because this rider is a Wallon, a French-speaking Belgian, but he does seem to appreciate the Belgian classics. In second position there, trying to get into terms, is Juan Antonio Fletcher of Rabobank.
You're right, he is a French speaker, Paul, but to my surprise, he speaks Flemish as well, which isn't always the case with the Walloon. They don't tend to speak what the Flemish speakers do speak, which is Flemish, of course, a form of the Dutch language. But this time, he doesn't care. He's flying up this hill. He's being chased, probably. It's not... Is it Fletcher that's chasing? I'm not so sure.
It looked like Fletcher trying to come across there.
Well, there's the gaps. This is going to do some serious damage now. And again, poor old Tom Bonan, left to do all of the work, is still in this group. He's just tacked in there, or is he? I don't think he is.
Well,
no, he's
like
not. That's
Bonan
a Katusha rider there.
I think Bonan's all of a sudden said, right, well, forget it.
Still on the front here.
Bonan sitting at the back. That's Chavanel at the front in the white and blue jersey.
Two of them, yeah.
Shadowed, of course, still by all of the riders from Rabobank. The Columbia rider in there, by the way, is Marcus Burkhardt. This is what it's like at the back.
Yes, well, the rider who's just in a spot of bother there for Team Columbia High Road is Bert Grabsch, the world time trial champion. Here he is, and he's just getting going.
I hope that bush on the side of the road wasn't a thorny bush, because that rider will have had a few prickles down his forearm trying to get himself back onto the cobblestones. 4 men now at the front of the race with 38 kilometres to go, but if they look over their shoulders, they will probably see that they're about to get company.
Let's go for 12 seconds. That's the third group, so these two riders are just behind now. They're probably 6 or 7 seconds. No, we're still looking here at the counter move, which has come from Philippe Gilbert. And helping them now is Juan Antonio Fletcher. So the Rabobank playing another card here. Maybe they feel that Langeveld isn't the man for the job, the way this race is. Or maybe Fletcher saw Gilbert and decided he had to go with him. Gilbert's got to be a marked man today.
Well, Juan Antonio Fletcher there, Phil, has seen an opportunity, and he's gone straight onto the wheel of Philippe Gilbert, who launched a very vicious attack on the Molenberg. There's the group just in front, which is starting to form at the front end of the main field. Gilbert is now looking for 10 seconds, and a little bit further back, the group that contains Tom Bonan is looking for 35 seconds.
The master of the lone break too in this race. If Gilbert can get to the front, he might well try to go alone, as he's done in the past. These are the leaders now, but they've been joined because the Heinrich Hausler, Sebastian Langeveld, gone straight to the front. And look at the way Heinrich Hausler is going again. He's not allowing this breakaway a chance to even recover from the catch.
As Sean Yates, my old training partner, would say, Henrik Hausler is absolutely stomping in this race here this afternoon. He's got the form, he's got the bit between his teeth, and he's got Team Quickstep completely and utterly on the defensive. There's, once again, the Frenchman on Quickstep, Sylvain Chavanel, forced to do the pacemaking to try and pull Tom Bonan back into contention.
But he's got Clyde behind him, Van Avermaet, teammates of riders now up the road, and so there's nobody going to help him. Chavanel knows that. He's trying to give Tom Bonan a break, who's sitting at the back of the race. This has been really all the gauntlets on the floor in this last hour. 37 kilometres to go. There is no indication yet, but if I were a betting man right now, I'd expect to see Hausler win this race.
Well, the way he's riding, he's got the form to do it. He's doing a lot of pacemaking at the front end of the group. But the 4 riders at the back of this group now, Phil, are going to start to become passengers, because this is really pretty much the remnants of the early morning breakaway. So they'll be looking at some pretty heavy legs, those riders in 6th to 3rd position.
Especially at this time of the year, because 200 kilometres this time of the year is quite a long ride. Hausler's had enough. He's going to stretch his back, and he's persuaded Sebastian Langeveld to come on through and do some work, which is good. Well, because this is the head of the race now. There's nobody up front.
Well, he's looked over his shoulder, I think, and seen that they're not really getting the big gap now. What's going on here? This looks as if it's still Gilbert and Fletcher train, but the race is only spread over 20 seconds. There you can see Fletcher, and he's only about 4 or 5 seconds off the front end of the group, which is now about being dominated by Team Quickstep.
Well, dominated by one man, Sylvain Chavanel. There are 16 riders in this group, and it looks as though they're about to reel in that attack from Gilbert. These are the flat twisting roads which take us away now towards the finish back in Ghent. Ghent, of course, is the hotbed of world cycling in Belgium, if not the hot bit of cycling in the world, especially from now until the end of April.
Well, Gilbert's group here has come back into the main field. Now it's still going to be the responsibility of Quick-Step to do the pacemaking at the front end of the main field. But this is, I think, a serious selection that's happened here. And with 16 seconds, well, nobody's going to help them, you see. The problem is a lot of teams are represented at the front and still Lotto want to go.
Well, they need to go now. They've no choice, because now all of a sudden they become attackers again. It'll be Van Avermaet who's trying to open up a little bit of a gap. Yep. But they're all there. They're scrabbling onto his back wheel. The Rabobank's boys will just block, and they've got a little split again. So those 18 riders as they were are now split up again. Great
move by Greg Van Avermaet. He waited till his teammate Philippe Gilbert had been caught and pulled back into the fold and decided he wanted to go straight over the top of that, but it hasn't made the difference. What Team Lotto are going to have to do now, I think, is actually combine forces with Quick-Step and try and get an organised chase at the front end of this group to pull back that group of 6 men.
Well, Gilbert's down the end of this line now, and he's having to react to the stretching of it too. 9 seconds, 8 seconds, and coming down the second group to the leaders. They're so close, but they can't catch them. As we now rejoin the leaders here, and it's Heinrich Hausler and Langeveld, the last 2 men to contact, who are anxious to continue with the pace. I think that's right, because the other riders are tired, and if the going gets pretty hard, I think they will drop off.
The town of Robost. I have a feeling, though, this group behind Phil has pretty much got the makings of catching that group of 6 riders. And then I think we'll be looking at the winner of this year's Het Nieuwsblad race, coming from the riders we're pretty much looking at in these 2 groups. The main field are currently at around about 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Roboostbank, with all the boys in the chase group except one, Langeveld, driving now at the front. I have to say that I've always thought black wasn't great for television, but they certainly stand out, these boys from Cervelo, on the new colours.
The men in black, and they've been very prominent at the front end of most of the races they've participated in this year. That's the second group on the road there. A little bit of slowing down coming from the riders from Rabobank, and that's Nick Noyens. Looking over his shoulder, there's Marcus Burkhardt in the yellow, the new strip of Team Columbia, which I have to say I'm starting to get to like.
Yes, I must confess I wasn't.
0.3 kilometres, fairly smooth, but once you've been in the saddle for around about 160 kilometres, the legs are starting to hurt a fraction.
Good racing road, this. Very, very typical of Belgium. The cobblestones, as again, Rabobank just keeping tempo here because they're not trying to close that gap down just at the moment. I'm just wondering if they'll have a lot of faith in Langeveld with his past history. I don't know.
I don't think they will. I don't think they're too happy with the situation. They will have heard, because most of the team managers now actually have televisions in the cars, and they will have seen the form of Heinrich Hausler, so they won't feel that they've got the winning of this with Hausler and Langeveld being together. That's why I think we'll start to see a little bit of a change in tactics later on.
Well, I must say, looking at the tempo and the way he's riding there, Langeveld looks superb today as he's pushing on, and Hausler would certainly beat him in the sprint if it came to that. There's the group behind, 23 seconds it represents. Just gained another 1 second. Rabobank, that's why they've tried to turn off at the front. And if they turn off at the front, then it's up to the riders with no interest to get through and keep the pressure on. It's back to Sylvain Chavanel, who is doing just that.
Well, Chavanel learning the hard way what it's like to ride on a classics team, because he's got to do a lot of pacemaking. In the past, he's always been the #1 dog on his team Cofidis, but here he's got responsibilities with Team Quick-Step. He's got to try and pull back that group of 6 riders to give the possibility of a victory to his man Tom Boonen, if it all comes back together and if it finishes in a sprint.
Well, Chavanel, like Hausler, has had success. He was second overall, but without winning a stage in the Tour of the Algarve, the race in Portugal. Hausler was second in the Tour of Qatar without winning a stage. So they've got good form, and it looks like Chavanel is having to push on here and do the work. Just swinging to the back of the race, this is Kevin Ister, who's coming up for the Agritubal team. I don't think he's catching up. I think he's just hanging off the back of the group. I think he's been here all the time.
I think he's been here all the time. He's just hanging a fraction there at the front end of the main field.
Well, it's still Chavanel here driving. Clier pulls off to the right as they now try and redress the situation. They're all still very much in this race, Paul, because we're looking at only 26 seconds.
Marcus Burghardt in the yellow and white jersey of Colombia. He's riding right at the front end of the main field as well. Stretched out into a fairly long line. It puts a lot of pressure onto Quick-Step to try and pull this race back together. And if they do, you can be absolutely certain, Phil, that there will be more attacks from Cervelo Test Team and Rabobank, who are very well represented in this group of riders, which is not very much more than about 15 to 16 men.
Well, that's right. Another rider here from Rabobank that we haven't seen driving yet, the holding him in reserve perhaps, is Bram Tankink. He's also in this group. 25 seconds, so they're holding it at 31 kilometres. That's about 19 miles to race. We're still on the narrow roads, but the major bergs, the big challenges of the day, are now behind the riders. And just look at this now. They've split the front group.
Well, they have completely and utterly split the front group, or should I say this one man here has split the front group, because this is a phenomenal ride by Heinrich Hausler here. Langevel gasping to try and stay in contact, and the last survivor of that early morning breakaway, Phil, I think, has just popped.
Well, this is it now. Boucher's the only man trying to hang on for Lambau credit there. The other two have gone. Zen and Hervé Duclos-Lazal. As we get on to 1.3 kilometres of cobblestones here now at the Lippenhoevenstraat. And this is what they wanted, and because they kept the pressure on and weren't afraid to ride at the front, it's simply a case of the elastic snapping, because those boys' legs were done.
I have to say, maybe I wasn't too complimentary on Langevel before, but he certainly has got the legs to match all of the accelerations of Heinrich Hausler, and that's for certain, as these riders now try to keep the advantage that they built up, and it's still hovering at around about the 30-second mark. And there's no real organisation behind, so Phil, I'd have to say these two guys here have got a very good chance to build and consolidate on their advantage.
Well, so often you see, and it's Burghardt here having to drive now because he's won the rides as well. Little bit teammateless, and has got to drive because they've been shadowed all the time by teammates of riders up the road. So be it, just half a minute the gap. They're far from out of it, but really, how long can they keep this up, knowing they're dragging along teammates of riders in the break?
Well, just sitting at the back there, Tom Bonen, I think he seems to have called off Sylvain Chavanel and said, well, forget it. Nobody's going to work with us in this group, so let's play the poker game and turn off the chasing at the front end, hoping that other teams will come and work, and that is exactly what's happened.
The rider up front, I think, is coming back rather than going forward. It looks like it might be Duclos-Lazal from the Cofidis squad. The brake behind has turned off yet again. Burghardt dropping back. Clier moves up in second wheel there. Looks like a Rabobank is slowing it down from the chase. This is the way it is going to be.
Well,
this
that is
the return of poor old Hervé. Dad will be going, oh dear.
Dad will almost certainly be watching this bike race from his front lounge in the city of Pau, right in the southern part of France. But Duclos-Lazal will shortly be back in the main field, taking the advantage of using all of the road there to get around that corner. But as he looks back, there's a different formation coming to the front now, Phil, because this is Team Silence Lotto deciding that they too may well be seeing Het Volk disappear from them.
Well, Hervé Duclos-Lazal's had a very good race today. All's well for the rest of the season. Looks across to see who's at the front. You better look over his shoulder too and find that this group is very small here, and if he's not keeping up tempo, he'll be slipping straight through the back door. There he is, number 52.
Acceleration there coming from Leif Hoster, who is in that group, and he right now thinks, so well, if we get ourselves organised here at Silence Lotto, there's a great chance for Greg van Avermaet to get himself a victory here this afternoon, because he's already showed us in some of the early season races that he's got his sprinting legs. And if they take assistance from Philippe Gilbert as well, it may well be that they can eat into that 34-second advantage. But currently, the advantage of the two men at the front of the race, Phil, is going into the positive sense for them.
Well, looking down that group there, the last time this race was cancelled was in 2004 because of snow. And since then, there's been 3 winners, and they're all in that chase group. Gilbert's got 2 wins, Philippe Pazzato is in there, and Nick Noyens. They've all won this race, and they're all in this group. And is it going to see a repeat win for one of them? 35 seconds. It's been a very difficult prizing open of the gap today.
Well, these riders are survivors of that early breakaway, looking over the shoulders, trying to count the number of favourites in this group, because it certainly has been a decanting of all of the favourites into the front end of this very serious chase. Pressure now going onto the shoulders of Silence Lotto, because all of the time, when anybody starts to organise, you can see that long line of Rabobank riders, and the second, third and fourth position in the line there is just discouraging any organised chase.
Well, as far as I know, David Boucher is the only survivor now up front. And he might well be on his way back here now. Our cameras are jumping all over the place. I'm not surprised. Difficult race now to keep tags on. There's Duclos Lazal sitting at the back and just seeing what happens now, whether he can answer the next tack when it comes his way.
There's Boucher. He's very
he's
shortly
coming back as well.
going to be back in the main field.
So that's it. All the breakaway has been caught. It's the new blood now that's gone away. Langeveld and Hausler. And they're sitting, well, it says Group 3, but I think that's, thank you. That's Group 2 now. 41 seconds the gap.
This is Leif Hoster on the front. He's obviously sacrificing himself for the team here this afternoon. Third place rider there for Rabobank is Nick Noyens. But they're in a very strong tactical position here, Rabobank, Phil, because they got 4 men in that group. Langeveld and Hausler are putting a lot of pressure on everybody else. And as they work well together, they've lifted it up now to 3/4 of a minute.
Yes, there's a little bit of a disruption back there now. The riders themselves will be a little confused too. Riders coming back one by one. They'll not be too certain, some of them, just how many are left up here. But the scourge of professional cycling, the race radio, I'm sure the manager will have told them in their ears that there are 2 very strong riders now, and time running out in the Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, or Gent, as the people that don't like to give any publicity to rival newspapers call this event. 27 kilometres to go, 49 seconds. We're nosing up to a minute. It's going to be a well-run race, this. It could succeed for these 2.
Well, it's starting to actually look rather good for them because it's still going in the right sense. It's going upwards, the advantage that these 2 men have got over the front end of the main field. Sebastian Langeveld here. He's probably starting to think to himself, right now, how am I going to get to the finishing line ahead of Heinrich Hausler? Because he is a man who's got a great reputation as a sprinter. But here, he's become, I think, a changed rider. He's now riding in the same role as a serious classics contender.
Well, are we looking now at the new blood of the future? A 24-year-old from Rabobank, Langeveld, and just 25, Heinrich Hausler. His birthday was just 3 days before this race began.
Quick left and right there. You see how dangerous these roads are. You've got to be attentive all of the time because those little cuts and breaks in the cobblestones and the side of the road can make it very difficult if you hit them wrongly, because you can see a wheel get smashed, you can see a tyre get ripped off, and you have to be alert all of the time. 53 seconds now, Phil. It's going to the good.
It's going towards the minute, 54. These 2 boys are riding superbly. They're confident, they're feeling good, they're not feeling like riders under pressure who are going to hit the wall in the next 26 kilometres. So the interest swings to the chase group, who have got to break the grip of the Cervelo and Rabobank teammates back there. And I think there's probably 6 teammates of the 2 teams in total in this chase group. Might be even 7. But certainly I can think now, Paul, there are certainly 2 Cervelos and 4 Rabobanks back in that group.
And there's 3 riders from Silence Lotto, and only one of them is sacrificing himself at the front end of the main field, and it's Leif Hoster. He's obviously got the nod, I think, from Greg van Avermaet, who is a very good sprinter, and I think that's what's going to be the tactic for Team Lotto. One lone rider from Colombia there, just on the left-hand side. That's Marcus Burkhardt. He's no stranger to success in this part of the world because he's a former winner of the Ghent-Wevelgem race.
Group 2, achtervolgers, the chasers, and it looks as though Hoster says, come on guys, and they say, well, why should we chase? 2 Rabobanks followed by a Cervelo. It's all down to the guys further down the bus, I'm afraid. And here comes the answer, Burkhardt having a go.
But look how quickly Rabobank respond there, straight onto his wheel. They're not giving any going out tickets at the moment. They want to make sure that everybody stays in contact, and they give the advantage to their man in the front, Langeveld. And it's not too far away now, Phil, from that minute. 55 seconds.
Looking good. It's been a dire chase. I'm surprised they're even holding it so close, really, because it's not an organised chase here. Now we've got 2 Rabobank riders got themselves back on the front. Clyde is blocking again for the Black Boys. Cervelo. And this group still pretty strong in numbers, but an awful lot of passengers. Still sitting at the back there is Kevin Ister of the Agri-Jabel team.
Well, just looking to see where Tom Bonin is sitting. I've also noticed that Thomas Vaitkes is in the group as well there for Team Astana. I've been trying to figure out what his jersey was, but he's the Lithuanian national champion.
Well, it's Noyen's doing the work at the front here. Oh, that's the wrong terminology. He's not doing any work at all. He's trying to back him off. Now with a little move coming through from, is it Thomas Voigtler? Looks like it might be, for B-Box Boyd Telecom. New name for that team as well this year. Colours remain the same. It looks to me as though there's a few riders got up to this group, because there's more than there were earlier.
It's maybe swelled just a fraction. Voigtler didn't create the surprise there, but he's going to have another little dig at the front. They can see this racer, the Het Nieuwsblad Gent, disappearing away from them this afternoon, because there it now is at 24 kilometres to go. It's the minute mark.
15 miles is 24 kilometres, and that's going to take them around about 40 minutes to ride through to the finish. Slightly less, perhaps. So that's leaving it now, I would say, advantage the tandem up front, which is, I'm not sure whether it's a German, Australian, Dutch tandem or what.
Well, I have a pretty much feeling that Henrik Hausler now wishes to be regarded as an Australian. I mean, he grew up in Australia, speaks English with a completely perfect Aussie accent. Yeah. And he is hoping to ride for Australia next year at the World Championships in Melbourne. However, if they want to catch those two leaders back, Phil, there's got to be an organised chase, and currently that is not existing in this group. There's one rider comes to the front, then another rider comes to the front, and that's not the way to catch a flying duo that we've got at the front end of this race.
You may have noticed there as well that this the road, to make sure it's closed for the riders, portable no entry signs dropped on the roadside, and they take them away tomorrow, of course, when it becomes a two-way road again. Now, another counter-attack here.
But by Rabobank, and I can't understand
I'm just trying to
that.
work out why they're doing that. I'm just trying to wonder why they're doing that. Is it Nick Noyens, or is it again? It's not Fletcher again, is it?
Oh. Well, it's a bit of a strange move there to see that, and it's obviously
marked by Cervelo.
Yep. Well, Cervelo, I think, are pretty happy with the presence of their man in the front. It was Fletcher trying to get off the front there.
And it's Hushoff who's brought him back. Interesting.
Yep.
Tactics I don't really understand there.
Well, I think maybe Fletcher is starting to think that there's a lot of tactical manoeuvring going on in this race here, and he's not completely convinced that his man in the breakaway, Langeveld, is going to get the win. In fact, Noyens is now going over the top, covered there by Gilbert.
Well, these are mystifying tactics. That means that they believe that with Langeveld, they will not get the winner if he stays away. They'll only finish second. Hausler will take the race for Cervelo, and they're now trying to redress that situation. There's the gap. These boys are riding at 62 seconds behind the two leaders, and there is another peloton coming a minute further back.
Well, in fact, it's Boucher who's come across the gap there. Look at the face on Gilbert. He's now seeing this as an opportunity, but he's got a big gap to try and get across there, Phil. A minute and 2 seconds in the last 23 kilometres of the race, and it looks pretty much as if it's slowly all coming back together. This is the cobblestone section of Langemund, and that's at 2.5 kilometres.
And again, the man from the Walloon area, the Ardennes, is enjoying life in Flanders, and they've incited a riot here, and Gilbert's quite happy to take part because he has the strength here. They were mystifying tactics, those, I must say. But anyway, Fletcher's hanging on the back of this group for the minute, and it may work out. The minute, 61 seconds. The race referees are panicking now, but we're holding steady.
This could be a good move by Gilbert. Look at him, he's giving it everything he's got here this afternoon, and he now realises there's a chance that they could open up the gap here. He's got Nick Noyens with him for the moment. Noyens is getting very annoyed, I would have to say, because he's not happy with the position of the motorbikes. He's in the defence of his teammate in front, but he feels that the motorbikes are actually helping Philippe Gilbert pick up his pace.
Well, Noyens, who won this race in 2005, is now being dragged along into a position to possibly win it again here. Gilbert, of course, he won in last year, and he also won in 2006. And he is now riding for a Belgian team, so victory for him today would be much more sweet than it was when he was on the French squads.
A little bit of disorganisation in the chase group there, and it's going once again back to Quick Step and the responsibility of them to try and pick up the pace-making at the front end of the main field. Gilbert looking across there saying, well, I'm not surprised, I'm a bit surprised to see Boucher coming back. He was in the early morning breakaway, but now he's seen the possibility of getting himself a place in the top 5 at the end of this race. There's the peloton, and in fact it's Thomas Voigtler who's doing the pace-making there. Still in the defensive is Rabobank. Second position there is the big man from Spain, Juan Antonio Fletcher, moving up there in the dark black jersey. I've never seen that jersey before on Thomas Vakus. It's actually quite a nice looking jersey.
Well, the Milram boy working there, Nicky Terpstra, trying, is he also playing a bit of a lone battle there now. It's Morrison who is the other rider who's tagged on to the back here.
Well, I'll tell you what, they've actually almost halved the advantage. That 1 minute mark has very rapidly, Phil, because of the violence of this attack, come down to 37 seconds. Now, Gilbert will be very happy with this because this is a situation that could see him getting the victory in this race for a third time if he can get across the gap.
And then everybody would question the tactics of Rabobank today if that's the way it's going to happen, because if they do catch the leaders, it was caused by the riot set up by Rabobank to get clear of the field and hunt down their own teammate up front. And so if Gilbert was to win, there'll be questions in the house tonight.
Around the corner, accelerating once again. Gilbert looks very comfortable, but Morrison, I have to say, really has got a fine pair of legs on him. They've got a gap there. This is Thomas Vogler sitting at the back in the blue jersey, and now Team Cervelo test team, Phil, have decided they're just going to sit at the back of this group and see how the event develops.
Well, Morrison, he's 31 years of age now, and he's been around only, in fact, a pro. He turned pro rather late back in 2002, and he's only ever won 4 races, and they've really been sort of what we call kermesse races. Last year, he got a couple of small races in Eusden. I used to be a member of the cycling club in Eusden, which is near Ghent, so he's not far away, and Puivelde, another town here in Belgium.
Sylvain Chavanel now riding for Quick Step in the blue and white jersey at the front, gets himself arched over his machine. 4th position for Tommeke Bonen. I have a feeling that he's given the word out to his man. Look, we're down to half a minute, and I've got the legs this afternoon to take the sprint out. Defending there in second position, still Juan Antonio Fletcher, and there are the 2 leaders. Still, Henrik Hausler, I have to say, Phil, is looking very convinced that they've got a chance of surviving here, but it's actually now going in the wrong direction. There are the chasers halfway across the gap, and the main field now is getting themselves organised with Sylvain Chavanel.
3/4 minute across the spread now. Rabobank only themselves to blame here for what they have done to the chase when they should have waited for somebody else. Morrison willing to work now. And Philippe Gilbert being given what he wanted, a little bit of freedom to manoeuvre and try and break away. And, you know, Noyens is a rider who could well steal this one, but has they made the right move?
Well, the big advantage that Philippe Gilbert has got is he's got 2 teammates in the groove behind. He's got Leif Hoster, and if it all comes back together, he's got Greg Van Avermaet for the sprint. But the big job of work here is being doing by the Frenchman, who I think has absolutely matured over the winter season to become a serious classics and a serious team man once he's come across to Quick Step. But look at Bonen there now, being a little bit more attentive, moving up into 4th position there, looking over the tops of the other riders, thinking about the possibility of victory. There's the white jerseyed man a little bit further back. That's Pippo Pozzato for Team Katusha.
And he stayed rather quiet. He's watched everybody else play their moves. He's done nothing to try and chase these 2, and here they are now. Langeveld working pretty well, and Hausler, they're sharing the work rate here. They're both strong today. And I don't know what Langeveld will think about being chased by his own team, because here they come now, and Gilbert is finishing off what Nick Noyens started.
Well, you notice now that Nick Noyens has switched off quite a fraction. He's taking advantage of sitting in the slipstream of Gilbert and Morrison, and he's put himself on the defensive role. Rabobank, theoretically, Phil, should not lose this race, but in fact, I think they're feeling the tactics are starting to slip away from them. Their strongest man is in that group there, Juan Antonio Fletcher. The 2 leaders, just 16 seconds and 30 seconds back to the main field. I have a nasty gut feeling, Phil, that this race is actually all going to come back together before the finish.
I think Rabobank may have blown this, the way their tactics, they haven't been good. As we're seeing now, the 3 chasers and the noddy dog on the back of the bike there getting very upset about the proximity of the cameras, because this is crucially poised at the moment, and I have to say there shouldn't be anything like those motorcycles behind these 3 riders, because we're looking at a 10-second gap and they're going to close with all those bikes in there.
Well, that, unfortunately, is the chaos of racing in Belgium, especially for the first big race of the year. Everybody's very nervous. Everybody wants to get the first good photos of the year to get into the new magazines, and that's why the photographers there are taking all kinds of risks. The man with the red shirt over the top of his jacket there is one of the referees, and it's his job to keep this race as safe and as clean as possible.
Yeah, it's not easy, I agree, but when you get guys working as hard as these boys to break clear, you don't want a free ride up for the boys that are coming up from the rear. 18 kilometres to go. It is not very far now, about 11 miles to the finish. 11 seconds is the gap to the three chasers, and then 14 seconds further back is the group with the most of the work being done there by Sylvain Chavanel. This is the middle group, Group 2.
Well, this has always been a little bit of the problem of Ghent, the early one-day classic in Belgium. The difficulties are in the first part of the race, and it's an awful long ride from the top of the Molenberg on the flat to get back into Ghent, and that's why some of the big teams can always get themselves organised. If they don't panic and there's a large number of riders in the group and they can bring the race back together, they're getting the gaps out now, Phil, and that's an indication there's a serious coming back. 11 seconds to Group 2, 23 seconds to the group with Tom Bonen.
And just look at all those motorcycles sitting in now behind the two leaders. They really should be in front of the two leaders right now. Here comes the three chasers, Gilbert, Noyens and Morisson. And no work at all being done by Noyens now, but hey, he's done the damage already by starting the attacking system with Rabobank.
Well, what he's hoping is that they will make the junction with the two leaders, and then you can be absolutely certain there will be a counter move by Nick Noyens, who will be trying to get his second victory in this great race, the Ghent Het Nieuwsblad race. Looks like the firepower's going out of this group as well, a fraction. Morizon on the front in the green jersey, relayed there by Philippe Gilbert, and they've got an anchor at the back of them, a sandbag holding on and slowing down their organisation, because it's always psychologically difficult to work when you're in a situation like this, when you know the guy at the back is having an easy ride.
Well, Frédéric Morizon, he is a rider from Belgium. He has ridden well at this time of the year before. He's finished 8th and 10th in his last two outings in Kuurne, Brussels Kuurne, which is not that far away from here. So he likes to get himself in order at this time of the year. He's not a big winner, but he's landed maybe a gem card here. But all of the work, really, the driving done by Philippe Gilbert here. The two-time winner, watch out, and Morrison's prepared to help. And Noyens, he's just watching them work now. Straight up the road there, you can see the two leaders.
Only 16 seconds, and Noyens is in an ideal situation here, just keeping an eye on the two riders in front. He's having the easiest ride as well, looking back to try and get an idea and an estimation of what the spread is in the field. Well, he's only looking back 7 or 8 seconds, and I think it's less than that to the front end of this group of contenders.
And what's the odds on the fact that it's Chavanel doing the work down there? We can't tell from this height, but I reckon he will be, and it's coming back. This could have an amazing finish to this race today. It's been a very competitive race. If Rabobank throw this one to the wind, they may have made a big mistake, but we'll see. They've still got to bring back those two leaders, and Hausler and Langeveld are looking good, and they'll be able to sense how well they're going up front now, because they're doing the chasing.
Well, these three now are going backwards, because if you look at the gap there of Group 2, the Tweede Achtervolkers, they're at 20 seconds, but the main field with all of the big contenders, I think very shortly will pull these three back into the fold. Noyens continually looking over his shoulder. That's a pretty dangerous thing to do, because if there's a slowing of the riders in front, I've seen many a rider go down by touching the wheel of the rider in front of him.
I begin to think these two have ridden out the storm, because the gap's out to 23 seconds now. They've started to reverse the trend. They're going back into the pack, those three chasers. These boys have just kept on with their job in hand and have not slowed down at all. And we're only 15 kilometres from the finish now. These three, any minute now, are going to be back in the field.
Well, it's 7 seconds, 8 seconds back to the group, and they're now starting to all look over their shoulders to see, and it's not a very good psychological thing when you're looking back and you can see you're not opening the gap, and you can see that that group is still staying there, still keeping you at the same distance, and all of a sudden the willpower tends to go out of a breakaway.
And Noyens doesn't quite know what to do now, because he's started the move and he's had to sit on. It's getting a bit too dangerous, so he's just waiting to see what pans out here. 23 seconds and holding now. Those three on these two riders. Half a minute only across the spread. Little flick of the arm there from Hausler. Needs some help from Sebastian Langeveld. Coming.
The energy, Phil, is starting to disappear away from the legs of Henrik Hausler. They're not the legs. They're not turning over like they were about 15, 20 kilometers ago. I think he's having a hard time keeping the pace up and high, but they've still got the advantage. They're the ones who are in front. They're still leading this race by pretty much half a minute. There you can see the three chasers halfway across the gap, and they will shortly be pulled up, and I'm certain, as you said, that it will be Sylvain Chavanel on the front end of that group.
He's enjoying his new team, isn't he? He's certainly been a terrific workhorse today. That'll all well. And Tom Bonen is in this group. Remember, this is one of these early classics in his own country. He has never won. He's excelled in races like the Tour of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders, and Paris-Roubaix. He's won those twice each. But he's never been in the winner's seat in this one.
Well, that in fact is Bonen sitting up there in third position in the line, and I'm thinking he's sitting there to encourage his teammate Sylvain Chavanel to really put the hammer down and pull this all back together. Chavanel has done a great job of work for Team Quickstep here this afternoon, and there he is, still banging away at the front end of the main field. He's just concentrating on those three riders in front of him. He doesn't even think about his own chances in a situation like this. What he has to do, job of work, get it done, pull them back into the fold. But once this group gets caught, watch out for some more attacks to come. There will be a slight slowing down, which will give it a little bit of an advantage to the two leaders.
Well, they're sitting up and waiting. Bonen and the boys are back in contention here. In fact, he's had a second and a third, but never a win in this race. And they have now regrouped. Not too sure how many, but I would say around 25 riders in that bunch as they all come back together again. And now it's these boys against two leaders, and Rabobank surely will not try to incite another attack from the bunch, because Gilbert proved he was up for it. These two have shown no signs of weakness either. It's been a good battle, and it's been one developed by pure strength of fast riding from the front. Nobody able to go with them. They forced the gap themselves.
It's been an incredible ride, I have to say, by Henrik Hausler, and he's got the advantage of having a Rabobank rider with him, because in that group behind there are 4 Rabobank riders. Look at Fletcher there in the orange jersey, sitting in second and third position. He is itching to go here, but he can't. He's held in the main field here, Phil, because of the fact his teammate is on the attack.
Silence Lotto would love to get a result today. They're a Belgian squad, but now it's left to them to chase, and they're resting Philippe Gilbert for the moment. Rabobank playing faithful teammates as they line up with Cervelo to try and block for those two boys out front. They're stretching it out. We're now almost half a minute.
Well, Big Tor Hushoft is the second rider there on the right-hand side in the black jersey of Cervelo Test Team. But I tell you one thing, Silence Lotto are thinking about Greg Van Avermaet for the sprint. No longer Robbie McEwen on this squad. Robbie McEwen, again, one of the massive transfers of this winter season. I have to say, I feel that this winter transfer season has probably been one of the busiest in many years.
Well, this looks like Van Avermaet who's doing all the work, but if it's not, it's not Johan Summeren, is it?
It's Leif Hoster.
It's still Leif Hoster at the front.
Then look at behind him, though. 1, 2, 3 Rabobank riders taking up all of the pace-making and disorganising the chase at the front. But there are 2 teams now are working at the front end of this group. Quickstep and still Sylvain Chavanel prepared to keep the pace nice and high. Leif Hoster in second position, not thinking anything at all about his own personal chances. He's thinking about the team sprinter's chance. But for a sprinter to have a go at victory, you've got to catch these 2 guys.
We're on countdown now. Our television directors put tenths of a kilometre in. 10.8 to go, 27 seconds, so they've lost a couple of seconds. They're just not going to panic at this stage. The good thing to their advantage is the roads twist and turn. They're always going round. And there's little help too, because the blackboard there, or the whiteboard, said it was 30 seconds, the gap.
Well, that gives them a bonus of 4 seconds, 10.5 kilometres to go. That corresponds to around about 13 minutes of racing at this level of the sport. And Hoster digging again, coming straight by Chavanel. These 2 men are burying themselves for their teammates. No thought of personal glory in a situation like this. You've just got to hurt yourself and concentrate on the job in hand, while the team leader, the team captain, sits a little bit further back, tries to keep his nose out of the wind and wait until the last moment when he has to take over the responsibility and try and get his wheel across the line in first place.
Hoster's big drive here has plucked off another couple of seconds, and doing long turns at the front because there's not a lot of firepower back here. So he'll swing off and he'll give Chavanel as much a break as he can, and then he'll probably drop again into second wheel because there's 2 or 3 Rabobanks back there, and then Tom Bonin is just behind. Then we've got the team block from Cervelo, and it's down to 22. That's been a good spell by Hoster.
Well, he's a strong bike rider. There's 10 kilometres to go officially for the two leaders. The race director telling us it's 9.7. Still, it's about 12 minutes of racing for these men at the front end of the main field, and they're starting to feel now that they've got the chance of dragging their team leaders into a possible victory here at the Het Nieuwsblad Ghent race. Frenchman sitting at the back there, I just noticed once again, Thomas Vogler, riding pretty well at the start of this season.
He often does at this time of the year. He usually goes away to the warmer climates of the French islands, where he rides pretty well, then comes over here. This is now Chavanel. Hoster's best ever finish in this race is a 7th, which he did last year, but he's a rider, don't forget, was once on the same team as Lance Armstrong on Discovery Channel at the end of 2006, after Lance had retired. He's back, by the way. He moved on to Predictor Lotto, which is where he is at, well, it's called Silence Lotto now, same team.
Same team, same infrastructure. Greg Van Avermaet is sitting at about 7th or 8th position in this group, and they're all waiting. All the sprinters now feel starting to get that little bit twitchy, starting to get themselves into the position, trying to decide which rider they want to follow when they get down into the sprint, and hoping that their teammates up front can do the job of work and pull it all back together. It's looking a little bit precarious for these two riders now. We're looking at 17 seconds with just about 5 miles to go.
And it's been left to just two riders here, Hoster and Chavanel, to try and shut it down. This is one of those horrible roads you don't want to see, over river and canal. Straight ahead will be the Shelder down there. Oh, it says so on the screen. How about that for a bit of luck?
Yep.
As we watch now these two riders here on that straight road.
A little bit of a blow to the morale as well for these two riders now, because they've just seen the neutral service car being pushed out of the gap. They've just seen the race referee's car moving out of the gap, and that's an indication to any professional bike rider that the main field is starting to come back very rapidly. The race referees will clear the gap to try and keep it as clean as possible.
Rounding of the shoulders here of the two workhorses of the chase, and everybody else sitting there licking their lips, not worried a little bit. Rabobank here have got 4 cards to play. The minute those two riders are, maybe they have got the tactics right. Maybe they got away with a bit of luck, though.
They will have to have a big amount of luck, because there's a lot of sprinters in this group, Phil. I've noticed Pipo Pozzato, as you said a little earlier on, he's in the white jersey of Team Katusha. He hasn't done anything at all. He's not expended any energy, and he's a very rapid finisher. Yeah. Bonin has done a lot of work, but he's still sitting up there near the front end of this main field. And watch out for a surprise maybe from Thomas Veitkus there, number 38 from Team Astana, because when he needs to, he's a pretty fast finisher.
Let's not forget, Pozzato's already won this race as well back in 2007. At the time, he was the first Italian since Michele Bartoli to win, who won it in 2001. Here we go, still Chavanel, the absolute hero today, Sylvain Chavanel. He's got himself a totally new identity in the world of cycling now, as he comes over to Quick Step. And I think we're going to see a lot of him this year. He seems to be so happy with his new signing.
Well, he had a great season last year, winning himself 10 races, but I think coming across to a big top squad like Team Quick Step, it's completely and utterly changed him. It's always a very brave thing for a Frenchman to do, because most of the French riders, they like the security of being on a French squad, and there are not very many French riders throughout the history of the sport have expatriated themselves to different teams.
Well, he's willing to work for this one, and he's hoping he's delivering Tom Bonin for a sprint finish, but the gap has stretched again. 22 seconds, that's inside 7 to go. This race is not done yet.
Well, it's supposed to be a flat part of the world here in Belgium, but I tell you one thing, this little motorway bridge probably feels like a massive mountain for one or two of those riders, because this has been a very tough race, a very fast race. We're looking at an average speed in excess of 40 kilometers an hour.
Well, there's no more than 20 riders left in this group, but I thought there were more earlier, so the pressure has stayed on. There's Hausler now.
All these guys are hoping for now, Phil, is there's a tortuous run in towards the finish, because if there is, they've got the advantage of picking their own lines around these corners, and a breakaway of 2 riders has got much more chances of picking a smooth way around these corners, with the possibility of disorganization coming at the front end of that chase group. If they want to catch them, they have to have more than just Sylvain Chavanel riding on the front end of this group, and as I speak, I'm pretty certain that will be Leif Hoster again coming to give the Frenchman some hand.
Well, the situation, it's Gilbert himself trying it. Got to be careful now on these tram tracks. That's always a sign. We're in the streets and the suburbs of Ghent. as the trams are come into play here. It's a city which is a beautiful old city laced with canals. Not quite as smelly as they were when I used to live there, but they're still here.
Well,
Plenty of boat traffic as well.
Strange to see Philippe Gilbert in a Belgian jersey, because for the whole of his career he raced for the French team Française des Jeux, and I think he too, Phil, is going to take the advantage of being on a solid squad for the one-day classics. He's not really thinking about his chances today. He's probably thinking further down the season and the possibility of a win at his almost home race, Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
And he's ridden well down there too, but Silence Lotto would love a result here because this is their area. And again, the pressure is on. But 21 seconds, the pressure may be on, but it's not helping out too much. I wonder if that's 5 or 6 kilometres to go.
5 kilometres to go, I would think.
Sync.
And these two riders, they still have to keep knocking away at trying to survive off the front end of the main field. It's 21 seconds officially, and we're looking down to see there's a rider going clear now. Somebody has decided this is the move by Juan Antonio Fletcher.
Well, this time he's gone again. He's gone when the gap is at 20 seconds. That is the 5 kilometre banner as the riders continue on towards the finish. But Fletcher is going to give himself another shot at winning this race.
Well, another shot is a great name for this man to have, because his name, in fact, means the archer. And today I think he's trying to pull back his blow. There's a little bit of a split in the main field, left and right. Nobody knows exactly which wheel to follow. And the cat is amongst the pigeons here on Team Rabobank, because they are obviously, Phil, not very convinced that their man Langeveld has got the legs to take this one out.
Round the back of the bus station here, because of the tram lines down the middle, well, Fletcher's had second. That's his highest ever finish in this race 2 years ago. Again, Rabobank have got control. Again, they're prepared to destroy.
This is a problem at the back for Leif Hoster, and I'm not sure whether it's a mechanical problem or whether it's a leg problem. But he needs to get himself back into this race if he's going to help out his teammate Greg van Avermaet.
Oh, this is Postuma who's on the front now. And Veek is just behind him. New men, new blood. 15 seconds a gap.
And check what that acceleration has done. It's brought it down to 15 seconds with 4 kilometres to go. 4 kilometres, 5.5 minutes. That's all these guys need to survive off the front end of what is now a charging chase group.
15 seconds. They've done ever so well. It's at the stage of the race now where you hope they're not caught. But there's so many riders getting excited now as Veetke swings out wide. Who's going to give him a hand? Not a lot of people. Rabobank are still desperately trying to stop that chase, hanging into 15 seconds. Our computer's saying 4.1, but we are in fact now at around 3.6 from the finish.
Well, I can see Philippe Gilbert riding up at the front. He's locked himself into third position, but he's looking over his shoulders, and the reason he's doing that, he's trying to check and see what the position is of his teammate. But this is a nice move now as he tries to make the counter over Terpstra.
Terpstra pulls across. Gilbert goes again. They're still trying to mark him here. And Andreas Kleider trying to get a word with the boss, because you saw his finger in his ear to try and hear what the news was. Where is Hausler? The gap is still 15 seconds.
That is not 15 seconds. That's about 7 or 8 seconds. There are the two chasers just up at the front. There's a chasing group of 4 riders at 3 kilometres to go. Phil, I would put that at less than 5 seconds.
Well, the camera doesn't lie, does it? But we're trying to get across Ghent here now with all the tram lines. It's a very difficult race to bring into the centre of this city, but they're doing it. And we are seeing a terrific finish to the newly named now the Het Nieuwsblad circuit of Ghent, as we now head home after 200 kilometres covered now. Our cameraman a little bit shaky there. We've lost him altogether. Here we come. They're in sight. It's not going to work. Well, I can't believe it. And now Hausler looks over his shoulder. So too does Langeveld. And what they're going to see, but there's still a gap of 3 kilometres. They won't give up yet.
Well, it's stretched out once again, and that is because that group of 4 riders was pulled back into the fold. But look at this big acceleration. And again, it's the riders from Rabobank who are chasing their own teammate at the front end of the bike race. And I think once again, trying to come across there is Juan Antonio Fletcher and Thomas Vogler.
I was just going to say, it looks like Vogler has got to the front now. For Boyd Telecom, he might smell his chance coming his way. We're looking now for the next banner for the finish. It'll be the 2 kilometre one we will see. We're inside 3 to go now. as they continue. There it is, 2 kilometres down towards the finish. It has got to be said, it could be just possible here as Vogler starts to drive the group towards them.
Well, what a turn for the books that would be if the Frenchman created the big surprise here this afternoon, and he's got himself halfway across the gap. But he now too has got, I think it's Joost Postuma on his wheel, and he won't make a move until, of course, they catch Hausler, if they catch him, and Langeveld.
Well, as we've gone under 2 kilometres to go, we're now on the English mile to the finish now, and that is all that's left of Het Nieuwsblad. And it's still not certain who is going to win. Langeveld and Hausler have certainly been the men of this race, but will they be there to use the sprint at the finish? That's the question now. For the first time, these are desperate faces.
Langeveld, just knowing that he has to keep the pressure on at the front end of this race, and still working hard, Heinrich Hausler, but they know that the main field behind, or what's left of the main field, can accelerate so rapidly on the run in towards the finish. These two guys at the front can probably now muster about 46 or 48 kilometres an hour, while that group behind can push themselves up to 50, 55 kilometres an hour and wipe away 3 or 4 seconds in no time at all.
Tricky moment as they cross the tram tracks. They take it cautiously. As we look now at the kilometre to go, we're inside the kilometre for the two leaders. They have continued to swap turns. Now, Hausler looks under his arm. Where are the chasers? Have I got time to finesse? I don't want to be first as we go into the last 500.
I tell you what, there's no time to finesse now. They're still looking to see if they can find that final kilometre kite, and I think it's just around the corner, and it's Philippe Gilbert going to the front. He's got number 1 on his back. He's got his teammate Greg van Avermaet up into about 4th or 5th place. These guys now are wondering, will we survive? But they need to keep the pressure on, because you never know. The group behind could make a tactical mistake. They could misjudge it, and that's why you've got to keep stamping on those pedals.
Well, just take a look at the face here of Hausler. What a classy bike rider he is. He's swung out. He's forced Langeveld to the front, and Langeveld himself didn't want to be there. And there's a move coming from the back that could well finish this off in the favour of a good finisher like Philippe Gilbert. But don't forget, you've got Van Avermaet, you've also got Burkhardt, you've got Tom Bonen in the sprint. As they line up now, Hausler has no choice but to go for it. And the field is coming. It is not decided yet. And we are about 500 metres out.
Well, there on the left-hand side, there's a couple of riders gone down right in the middle there. I didn't see who it was, but still, Hausler is leading this race.
Well, I think it might well have been Pozzato who's gone down there, and there's another crash as well. Now, that certainly is Pozzato. That's the only Katusha jersey in this group, as now they make it for the line. And look at a surprise turn. This Thor Hushoff gets it in the end. He could never have believed that was possible. I think it's Kevin Ister, who's always sat at the back throughout the chase, has gone over in second place. Fletcher, I guess, was the Rabobank rider. But it all happened, sadly for us all, Paul, behind those cars who should never have been there.
Well, that was very chaotic on the run in towards the finish. I've absolutely no idea who went down there, but I cannot see Pippo Pozzato, so he must have been one of the riders who went down. Great job by this team, Cervelo test team. It's so difficult to put a new team back on the block as the main field are coming in. They've lost themselves about 45 seconds.
Well, and this looks like Romain Feliu is taking them over the line there for Agri Turbel. So it's a nice result for him. I don't know where he'd be. Top 20, I would think, just because there's about 18 and 19 riders in that chase group. Eventually became the lead group, all in the last 400 metres.
In fact,
it was Terpstra shot out of the pack. Or was that Terpstra on the floor?
That's Terpstra on the floor there. He's gone down very hard indeed, and I didn't see how that happened, but that was pretty chaotic in the middle of the field. Everybody taking lots of risks. Thomas Vaikus went down as well.
Yes, Vaikus is down, yeah.
Yeah. And Philippe Gilbert, he was obviously caught up in it. He'd led out the sprint for his teammates. Bikes and bodies all over the road here in the last 250 metres.
Well, Vaikus is left rolling in the road there. As we've gone back to live pictures here, I'm absolutely certain Pozzato was the rider who crashed after that. And I'm not sure, but he could have collided with Langeveld, because Langeveld was going back through the bunch rather quickly there. As you can see now, Hushoff came from nowhere there. Big result for Kevin Ister of Agri Turbel to get second.
And just fourth place there is Van Avermaet as well.
Yeah.
And so he almost pulled it off. But, you know, the big man, Thor Hushoff, he likes races like this, conditions like this. He rode defensively for his team throughout the whole of that last 40 kilometres or so. And when the chaos happened at the back, let's have a look at this again. There it is. And, in fact, it looks...
Oh, that's
Pozzato.
That was Langeveld. He collided with Pozzato, so he did. He hit Langeveld coming back rapidly from that breakaway and took out Pozzato. And then it left the door wide open for Hushoff, who 400 metres out could never have believed he was about to win the Het Nieuwsblad. But he has, and as a result of that, he gets his second win of the year, because he also won the third stage of the Amgen Tour of California.
Well, you give a man like him 2 or 3 lengths advantage with 200 metres to go, there's no chance of ever seeing him again, and that was a great win there by Cervelo Test Team. Juan Antonio Fletcher just there on the left-hand side. Well, Rabobank had the tactical advantage, Phil. Here is a confirmation of that result.
Hushoff, Ister, Fletcher gets third, Avamat fourth, as we saw it. Berghardt in for Team Columbia High Road. And Morrison did well to hold on to sixth after his work rate. Clear did well with all his blocking to get seventh. Heisler slipped away to eighth. Terpstra at ninth, so it couldn't have been Terpstra on the floor. And here, let's hear what he's saying.
In the sprint, Andreas Clear, he said go Tor, and he had a good lead out for me. So he did a perfect lead out. That was for me to just do a good sprint. In the end, I heard it was a crash, but the team did an awesome job today. So I'm really, really happy, of course, for my win. But the teamwork today was incredible.
Can you explain the tactics? You had Hausler in front. Of course, he's fast too.
Yeah, for us it was perfect when Haus was in front. We want to keep it like this, so me and Clear was in the group behind. We can just sit easy in the group and control the race. And when we saw that they almost get caught, we just had to go. And it's too bad for Hausler that he didn't win, but now we got a really good team win today.
Compared to your victory in Gent-Wevelgem, how would you rank this victory?
I don't know. Gent-Wevelgem is a big race as well, but this race, it's really, really big, and it was good to win this one with the team. So I'm really, really happy.
Congratulations. Thanks very much.
No. Can you put in the bag?
Yes, Tor Hushoff there. He won Gent-Wevelgem 2 years ago, well, 3 years now, 2006. A very gracious man there, but it's all about winning for your team, isn't it, Paul? And that's the way it worked out.
Well, it worked out perfectly. He played the perfect teammate up until the last moment when he had to take the responsibility at the front end of the race. Juan Antonio Fletcher in third place. I have to say a little bit sad for Rabobank, because they had 5 men in that group and they really weren't able to get the tactics together.
Fletcher, one of the few Spanish riders who really is a man for these early season classic races in Belgium and France. He's proved it time and time again. Huge result, biggest ever for Kevin Ister, who gets second place and puts Agri-Tubel on the podium as well. So they'll all be pretty happy with that.
Bit of a revelation on the start of this season, Kevin Ister from Agri-Tubel, a Belgian rider. But the big winner has to be the God of Thunder, Tor Hushoff.
Well, I make his victory list now, stretching out to 52 wins, his second win of 2009, and he's been a pro. This will be his 10th year as a pro this year. The only Norwegian still to win the green jersey in the Tour de France. And there's another trophy now. We need to build a new house for all these trophies.
Well, he can take them back to Oslo. He lives just outside of Oslo. He was brought into the sport because he was a great fan of the first real top Norwegian cyclist, Dag Otto Lauritzen. Yeah. And Dag Otto used to take him out training when he was a young cyclist. And I think now we're going to see a whole host of Norwegian bike riders coming through to the top end of the professional echelons.
They're there. Scandinavian riders are coming thick and fast at the moment. But more importantly for Tour today, it puts the new team on the block, Cervelo Test Team, right on top of this particular block here in Het Nieuwsblad. As they now wait for the, I think it's the anthem, but we can't hear. Oh no, they're waving to the crowd. So, a nice mixed result. I have to say, if all races are as exciting as this one, in the future of 2009, we're going to have some great cycling news to bring you on World Cycling Productions. Celebrating 20 years this year, by the way, when we go to the Ronde van Vlaanderen, so stay with us and enjoy that as well. This is how the race went today. Little problem here at the back of the race at the time. This was Gerald Cholik. We saw the end of him. This is how the big peloton slowly got thinned out. We saw that crash very early on today. And then we saw these riders disqualified. 4 of them told because they went over an amber flashing light at the level crossing. They were kicked out of the race. Rabobank then on the Tyenberg. They decided to try and open it up and split the field. They succeeded certainly in doing that. Tom Bonen tried to get in on the action. Cholik, I'm afraid, there was nothing left here but to end his days rather prematurely. After a crash, then came the attack. as he joined the leaders. Heinrich Hausler, Sebastian Langeveld came up to the remnants of the breakaway. And try as they might, they could not pull those two riders back into the fold. This is where he left the breakaway, and it was all the work of Hausler, but a very competent Langeveld following. And then who was going to do the chasing? It's being left largely to the Rabobank to destroy the hopes of their own teammate as they started to counter moves themselves. Sebastian Chavanel joined in to try and prepare the way for Tom Bonen. And then as they raced down towards the finish, the victory was never in doubt, or it was in doubt rather, until the last 500 metres. Well, as we watched the riders run into the finish in Ghent, where it became all over in the last couple of kilometres for the two leaders, I'm Phil Liggett, alongside me Paul Sherwin. We'll say goodbye to you now and stay with us on World Cycling Productions as 2009 continues. Goodbye.